Hutner, and this is Coffee with H2. Today on our show, I'm honored that we will be speaking to Sisters Carol Gilbert and Ardeth Plate, who are Dominican nuns, and they've been anti-nuclear activists for over 40 years. And I came to meet you at the UN this summer when there was the signing of the treaty to abolish nuclear weapons.
That's right.
We were all present at this extraordinary moment, and your bags kind of illustrate this as well.
That's right.
So today we'll be talking about what brought you to do this work.
Well, in the beginning, I worked with civil rights cases with farm workers, and then really got involved in countering war, Vietnam War. And so in doing the direct action during that time and seeing the connection of all these violences going on in the United States of America and learning the systems that were existing, you know, I really became interested in nuclear weapons. However, immediate beginnings would be when we heard that there might be a possibility of Michigan taking in nuclear weapons. So Sister Carol and I, who were part of the Home for Peace and Justice and Advocacy for Justice, really took on working with the rest of the people in Michigan to pass an initiative. And the initiative did not allow nuclear weapons to come on the grounds of Michigan. It passed by 56% of the vote. And from that point on until this present time, we have become deeply involved in study, organizing, and educating and acting in behalf of a nuclear-free world.
And the last 5 years, from 1990 to 1995, Ardeth and I actually moved into the two communities where those nuclear weapons were housed. So in the lower peninsula of Michigan, Wordsmith Air Force Base, we lived 3 years thinking the base would, be around forever. And it was part of base closures. And so then we went up to the upper peninsula. And it was really a very sacred time of us getting to know, I mean, our neighbors, these are small communities, and our neighbors were all military people, non-commissioned officers. We were there when they went off to that first Gulf War, and we were there when they came home and shared their stories and cried in our living room with what had happened. So it was really a very sacred time. Then 2 years in the Upper Peninsula, and however we got them out of Michigan, but they were just transferred, and so we've then moved to be closer to Washington, D.C., and to continue our work to abolish nuclear weapons.
And you spend a long time at some of these sites. So I know you were in prayer and in vigil,
Yes.
and you've had direct actions.
Yes.
Could you describe some of those for us?
Oh, what we did is created a faith and resistance retreats and actions, and we would usually involve the bishops of all the different faiths and the presbyteries, and even other Native Americans and Buddhists and so on, and we just organized Michigan in order to have actions of entering into the base, of leafleting, of organizing around political people to, get rid of these nuclear weapons from Michigan. But we were usually arrested, and in being detained, we would then, be taken to court and speak our truths within the courtroom. Sometimes we'd have 100 people arrested at a time, which really gave the courts an openness to be able to listen to the laws of the land and why nuclear weapons in themselves, what was happening, were illegal.
Could you talk about plowshares and how you use that in your form of protest?
Years later, we entered into nuclear sites. We had our own blood in baby bottles. We poured our blood on the missile silo or on the weapon, the carrier that was killing in some place, to say these can never use nuclear weapons. They should not be existing. And we hammered symbolically. And these symbols were meaningful to us. They shall hammer their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against another nation, nor shall they train for war anymore. So the symbols became very important to us in these plowshare actions.
And plowshares is one type of action that is taken. The first was in 1980.
1980 was the beginning.
1980 was the beginning. There have been hundreds. They've been all around the world. And as Ardeth said, it's very symbolic, part of the reason for blood, and we have doctor friends who draw our blood, and we put them in baby bottles because babies have the least to say about what happens to the world, and print our message on the baby bottles. But blood, we don't see the messiness of any war. It's like, it's like so cleansed. I sit here with my computer and, send the drone out to drop the bomb. We don't see the messiness of blood. And also for us as women religious, it's very Eucharistic. Blood is what flows through our vein. It's what gives us life. And the hammer is a simple household hammer when we were out at NA, it was a 310 concrete lid. So it's just,
1,000 ton.
How many?
1,000 ton.
1,000-ton concrete lid. It's very symbolic in what we're doing and what our actions are about. But plowshares is one way we feel that we are all in the circle. And so support people, the person who has to be at home taking care of children and teaching them to be nonviolent, the prayer circles, we all are doing what we can do to stop nuclear weapons. And it isn't like this is, this higher, greater action than any other action. We all participate in abolishing weapons.
However, we did get more time in prison for it. So,
You did.
yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? What was prison like for you? Because you had you had a much longer sentence, right? You had the felony sentencing,
charged with
right?
felonies.
So that's and then they had shorter. I know you had shorter stays. How many
Yes.
times have you been in jail?
Well, we know that we've been in more than 40 jails and prisons throughout the
Oh, my
United
goodness.
States, but the times were numerous, for example, around the nuclear sites where we lived in Michigan. So we've never really counted. It really doesn't, the times don't make a difference to us because it's really a lifetime. And we continue to do actions. Even after we've been in jails and prisons, we continue to do again. There have been times where we've done the same kind of action and have not had prison. So it's in prison, we are with the people most affected by war, most affected by the building of nuclear weapons. I mean, the poorest. Funds going into killing are so much more than anything going into life-giving measures. So it's just a matter of being with women, and in jails it's women and men who've suffered grave consequences, who usually are there for nonviolent crimes. Many of the women have been abused. Many have been raped, beat, injured in some way. I mean, many of them who have turned to drugs in some way were trying to numb themselves, or they were involved with men who were involved, and many of them took the rap for them. So, I mean, I see the women that we've been with, just really, really affected by war, weapons, and the whole mentality of injury and force rather than, being able to talk and dialogue, negotiate on a national level.
It's interesting that you raise the issue about women, because I know in the treaty there's a whole section in there on gender, which shows that from the work that Mary Olson and Arjun Makhijani have done on the Beer 7 report on radiation health impacts, showing that women are 50% more likely to develop cancer from the same radiation exposure as a grown man, and children 7 times as likely, and almost 50% is more likely to die from that exposure. And that's something that's not incorporated into our regulatory safety measures and in terms of nuclear issues in the workplace and in weapons factories or what have you. And so this war on women, in a sense, right, is pervasive. And it's in the prison system.
Yes.
It's in the environment from exposure to radiation. And so interestingly, and I know we were present at the moment of the signing.
Yes.
So many people there, and so many of the people involved with anti-nuclear work, starting with Women Strike for Peace back in the 1950s, have been women. So there's this legacy which you are clearly a part of.
Thank you. And many of the ambassadors who were present there were women who worked on trying to negotiate and come to consensus. This treaty was not the easiest. I mean, every word, had to be thought through, and how is this country going to look at it? How is this country going to look at it? And then we had the Women's March to Ban the Bomb, which was a couple days after the negotiations started on June 17th. And there were demonstrations. Of course, it was women, but it was also men and children. Demonstrations all over the world. And it got little to no press in this country, as it usually did. Just as the day after, really it was the day the treaty was signed, but it would have been the next day in Japan, there were thousands of people in the streets of Japan celebrating that this treaty had passed and that another country, another group of people was not going to be devastated like the Hibakusha. And however, we still have indigenous people in this country, in the Marshall Islands, and people who live around nuclear bases and suffer the effects of this. It's, in fact, the military is the greatest contaminator to the planet today. We have all these environmentalists out here who are doing wonderful things, and we say connect the dots, realize that the military is the greatest polluter of the planet.
So a lot of these people who put together this treaty, they officially won the Nobel Peace Prize recently, 2017, for this anti-nuclear work. But you've said, and others have said, really this is a Nobel Peace Prize for all of those, including you, including so many wonderful organizations, Hibakusha Stories, Critical Will, you know, a number of organizations. All of these folks are prize winners, Nobel Peace Prize winners, because we all work as a team.
And it will be just like that in every movement, because it's always from the grassroots people and the momentum that is gathered over the years. And then finally it comes to the point where it will culminate in real success to develop a tool that will be able to say no. You know, no testing, no manufacturing, no possession, no construction, no transferring, no putting nuclear weapons on other soil, no threatening to use, no ever use of nuclear weapons. This is what the treaty just builds on now, to the point where we as United States citizens must work together to actually get the United States to sign it and to ratify it. And that is the work of all the grassroots people. We have it now, it will be in force. And that is the momentum that we use to say, all right, nuclear-free world. This is what our next generations are begging for. World without war. This is what we're actually begging for as next generations. We don't want that kind of violence. We want these funds, these trillions of dollars, to go into basic human needs. And we love not only the United States, but we include all the brothers and sisters on planet, because whatever happens one place on the planet affects us all. And so I see the young people understanding much better the one world, the one planet, you know, the one body, the one blood, the one family. So that's what we're working for with them.
So how does faith play into this?
Well, certainly our faith plays a very important role in what we are about. I guess one of the things I've thought about through the years is I've never wanted a child to come to me and say, why didn't you do anything? You know, what were you doing? You know, I was shopping, I was doing this, I was doing whatever. And our faith and all faiths, we were part of an interfaith prayer service every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning at the Isaiah Wall outside the United Nations. And so we gathered with sheiks and Buddhists and Muslims and Christians and the World Council of Churches. And the one common thread was love. And I think that's what our faith has been about for so long. I mean, the nonviolent Jesus came to say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. And what does that really mean? Thou shalt not kill. What does that really mean? You know, we can get upset with a person, and it might have been more, but a person in Las Vegas who shoots out into all this crowd. But what about a country who has nuclear weapons and can destroy the planet? And, you know, we give all these kinds of people awards and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So we're in a critical moment right now where we have some issues going on with North Korea and the U.S., and there's a lot of hostile conversation and a lot of concern about potential nuclear war. What do you have to say to us about this?
In 2016, North Korea, when the vote was taken to have a conference that was the conference in March and June, July, when the treaty came out, they voted definitely for that kind of conference. So first of all, we have North Korea saying through that, yes, we need to talk about that. And, you know, if you see the history of the United States as it relates to North Korea, you will see the United States taking sides to South Korea, putting nuclear weapons on their soil, and at this time, definitely training for massive killing. I mean, and the rhetoric goes with it. Wipe out North Korea. You know, no leader can threaten to use any weapons on North Korea and not understand why North Korea feels they must protect themselves. They're looking and saying the only power nations in the world are the ones with nuclear weapons. Now, given the United States was supposed to, you know, stop and get rid of all their nuclear weapons, and no other country was supposed to build it. The United States didn't do that. So they're looking at us to be the ones that actually keep on going to bring about good dialogue among nations.
And Heidi, speaking of women, there's a group called Women Cross the DMZ, started by a group of women in South Korea. And over 450 women have signed their most recent letter, which was sent to the UN Secretary General, asking for about three things, one of which is to say, you must reprimand the President of the United States because he violated our UN Charter when he stood up and said, we will destroy North Korea. That is a violation of the UN Charter. And he needs to be reprimanded in the strongest way he can be reprimanded. And they're asking for dialogue. These women are saying we must sit down, we must dialogue. I think the greatest thing we could do right now is to sign the treaty, ban nuclear weapons.
Absolutely. So final words for our audiences. What can people do to act in this moment, in this very heated moment? What can individual people do?
Not pay taxes for war and weapons, you know, call, write, whoever has the decision making in the Senate, whoever has, you know, the media, get the media involved, do direct action, mobilize massively, get our country, and also, you know, we have to get Russia and the United States, who have 93% of these weapons, we have to get them on board, because as soon as we do, these other countries definitely will get rid of their nuclear weapons. We've come to the point of mass destruction, and it is in process when the only thing you do is try to compete with each other. We must become partners with the rest of the world, and we can build that as people. And we can build a nation with humanitarian relations rather than always with force. We pray for that, we'll work for that. And young people, we'll come with you. You need to do it, we'll walk with you.
I mean, we have 122 countries that signed the treaty, which is the majority of the world's countries. I think in the United States, we have to begin, which is why we've been out on college campuses, we have to teach the treaty because people don't know about the treaty yet, and then say, call Nikki Haley, who is our U.S. ambassador at the UN, call your senator, call your representative and saying, will you support the treaty? Do you know about the treaty? Call your bank. Are you investing in nuclear weapons? If you are, withdraw the money. Amalgamated Bank has a policy that they will not invest in nuclear weapons. So put your money into Amalgamated Bank.
And put a banner there in every demonstration that you hold, because every one of these issues is connected, from climate to poverty to DACA, no matter what it is. Also put in support the treaty, because ban the bomb treaty, because these issues are all connected.
Thank you so much. It's been really wonderful having you on our show today.
Thank you. Great being with you.
And thank you for your good work. Your whole life, you've been really committed to this.
And thank you for your work.
That's right.
We need journalists who are willing to put these kinds of things on the air.
Well, thank you. My mom was a member of Women's Strike for Peace, so it's in my blood.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this has been Coffee with H2 with Heidi Hutner, and we are so grateful you watched today. We have many more episodes on a variety of sustainability issues. You can find them on HeidiHutner.com.